And we're recording?
Right on. Okay. Greetings, Victron Energy installers, end users, and enthusiasts. And welcome to Victron Energy's Closed Loop Battery Management Solutions webinar. Coming to you off-grid, high atop Chickadee Ridge in northwest Nebraska, and powered by Victron Gear. Alan Santos Bush, North American Sales Manager in Seattle, and Nate Yarbrough, a Victron ambassador, who is joining us from San Diego, our panelists today. Okay, who's Marc? A little background. I've been in the renewable energy field for about a dozen years. I started out in small wind. Small wind is defined as 10 kilowatts, or excuse me, 1 kilowatt through 100 kilowatts. We pretty much installed that spectrum over the years. I also worked in wind resource assessment, where I would go out remote locations in North America, put up towers with anemometers, climb towers, resensor. Here's a shot of an 80-meter tower in Northern California at a wind farm, Hatchet Ridge. We did a lot of off-grid. This is probably one of my first installations. We used a lot of dual axis trackers at that time when solar was $7, $8 a watt. It made a lot of sense. I still think there's value in dual axis trackers, even at the cheaper per watt price, because if you want the power right in the morning, you got it. I changed up things for a little bit, worked with Médecins Sans Frontières, or Doctors Without Borders. Here's a shot of my friend Ravi in Khartoum, North Sudan. We're doing some training for a installation near the Ethiopian border. I was unable to travel, couldn't get a travel permit at the time, so I managed it remotely, which was a good exercise, a challenge, but we succeeded, and it's still rocking out. This was in 2016. This was my first introduction to Victron Energy, and really liked it. And more recently, I've become a Victron Energy ambassador trainer, focusing on North American stationary applications. Okay, covered in this webinar, an explanation and setup procedures to integrate Discover AES batteries with Victron Energy's equipment in a closed loop communication configuration. We'll also have an overview of other battery manufacturers that are also compatible in this arrangement using Victron's gear. And as we go along, we're going to assume that people have a basic familiarity with firmware upgrades, VE Connect, VE Bus Configurator, and VE Direct. And like Nate says, Victron does a really good job with supporting documentation through Victron Live and Victron Community and through their YouTube channels. Okay, so with lithium battery technology becoming more affordable and readily available, Victron Energy and lithium and other battery manufacturers have really fine-tuned the ability of the charging and discharging of equipment to work seamlessly as they were one unit. In the past, as an installer, putting in off-grid systems, mainly using lead-acid batteries, there's a great deal of making sure the inverter set points were in line with the battery specifications to make sure the inverter would disconnect before the battery is permanently damaged. This also went for different charging possibilities that were available, such as the charger portion of an inverter charger, MPPT charge controllers, solar charge controllers, and if you're fortunate enough to have a good wind resource and a good wind turbine, this could also be introduced into the system via an MPPT charge controller. So we had to look at things like temperature coefficients of those batteries, voltage offsets, absorbed voltages, absorbed time settings. If too much charge on lead acid, it would shorten its life. Too little would have the same result. For my dozen years in the RE industry, it seems like this was the most unknown or challenging issue in the installation. With Victron's amazing communication system, there's been the ability for the battery management system to instruct the charging and discharging characteristics. Closed loop battery management systems like this take the guesswork out of making sure everybody plays well together. This, for me, is really an installer's dream. The BMS is truly the conductor of this little orchestra. In this webinar, we'll be focusing on Discover AES lithium batteries. So let's take a little closer look at the system that we have here. We have two 5000 Quattros. We have those set up in a dual or split phase configuration. Below this is my power distribution panel where I bring in all my AC and DC connections. And right on the bottom, you can kind of see where the battery cables are coming into this. We have overcurrent protection built in on the center for the AC. And those little red tabs, those guards, are hiding a 250 amp breaker that's mechanically hydraulically operated to disconnect the inverter from the battery. With the system, we have two 250/60 MPPTs. We have about 1200 watts coupled on each of those. We have overcurrent protection below that, the battery side of that, and we're using MC4 cables. This isn't really a national electric code compliant with the MC4, but we're showing an international setting here, and I really like the MC4 connections. For the GX device, I'm using an Octo, which has 10 VE direct ports, so I can really add a lot of MPPTs to this system. And we're using Discover's 6.65 kilowatt hour AES batteries. So we've got a total of 13.3 kilowatt hours of storage. Because the lithium battery temperature considerations, we've placed these Discover batteries in an insulated, partially recessed into the shop floor to maintain a more constant temp. We live in an area where we can see -40 C and we can see +40 C in these areas. The shop doesn't see those extremes, but anything below 5 degrees C will disable the charging. So they've done very, very well. We put these in December, and they've done very well. Okay, what is closed loop? In a closed loop configuration, the battery charge and discharge rates and settings are dynamically controlled by the BMS of the Discover AES battery. During normal operation, the charge characteristics are governed automatically by the GX device via the distributed voltage and current control, or DVCC, with instructions from the connected AES battery. Okay, we have closed loop. Now what's an open loop? Open loop configuration are set up manually through the controller at the time of installation. This is commonly referred to as a lead acid drop-in replacement configuration, or just old school. It has no comm. You're relying on the set points to cover everything. Okay, let's get started. So these next step, again, presume the familiarity with firmware upgrades, VE configure, VE bus configurator, and VE Connect app. All right, we're going to look at the minimum battery capacity. This is something that's taken right from the Discover manual. So we have the first line, we have a 48 volt 3000 multi. So for every one of those, you would need one of the 6.65 kilowatt hour batteries. In a three-phase configuration, you would need two. At my facility here, we've got two 5000s. So for every one of those batteries, or for every one of those inverter chargers, we need one of those batteries. So we have two batteries here. You'd need three for a three-phase, and so on. So this gives you a look at the 8,000, 10,000, and 15,000. And then this bottom shows the 24-volt version. It's a 2.8 kilowatt hour battery. So for a multi 3000, we'd want one. For 5000, we'd want two. 8000, we'd need three. So this is something that the good folks at Discover Battery shared with me yesterday. So autonomy, you're just going to size it just like you normally would. So you're going to use that 6.65, and that's the useful power in that battery. There's actually 7.4 kilowatt hours, but there's 6.65 of usable. So you're going to use just like you would size normally. And peak AC surge, convert inverter AC surge to DC amps and divide by 300. So that's the maximum charge that you can put on those batteries. So continuous AC charge, convert inverter AC continuous to DC amps and divide by 130. So 130 amps is a continuous that you can get out or put in those batteries. So I will share my slide deck, and this one's kind of busy, but basically this would give you a good way to size a Discover battery to your Victron gear. All right, so we've sized our battery. We're gonna make sure the Discover communications or CAN bus cables are not installed. None of those are installed at this time. So turn on the batteries and all the Victron equipment. We'll need to update the firmware to at least these firmware revisions. The Multi-Plus is 459 or later. The GX device, and that could be a color control or CCGX, a Venus, Octo, or the new Serbo. So you'd need at least the 2.4 version or later for that. You can do it with the versions earlier, but there's some magic that really happened when the folks at Victron came out with this 2.4, and we'll discuss that later. You'll need a version 1.42 or later for your MPPTs. All right, we're going to configure the VE bus. After we did the firmware, make sure everything's good there. This is a screenshot of my VE bus system here that I set up. You probably don't need to do this if you have a single, but it's required if you're going to do a parallel, dual phase, or three phase. So now we're going to get into the VE config. From an installer's perspective, this is a really nice and easy program to set up the characteristics of your multi or quattro. So remember, these parameters, once set, will become the default values used if the Comm or the AES battery is interrupted for some reason. So on the VE config, on the General tab, we will want to, on either size battery, we'll want to enable the overruled by remote, enable battery monitor. The state of charge when finished is 95%. The total battery capacity, and this is per battery installed. So 110 amp hour is what you would put in there if you had one battery, 220 if you had two, and so on. So the 48 volt version that we have here, we've got two. So I've put 260 amp hours in there. And the charge efficiency for both is 95%. Now we'll get into the inverter tab. The DC input low shutdown, 24 volt for the 24 volt system, 48 for the 48. DC input low restart is 26 and 52. DC input pre-alarm would be 25.5 and 51.0 for the 48. Enable AES, we would disable that. Okay, this is not referencing the Discover AES batteries. This is another function of Victron, and you could learn more about that on possibly Victron Live. All right, we're going to get into the charger tab. So we're going to enable the charger. The battery type, we're going to leave blank. We're going to enable the lithium battery. We're going to check that. The charge curve is fixed. The absorb, we're going to set to 27.2 and 54.4, just like on the other. The float, 26.8, 53.6. And the charge current per battery installed, 110 amps for the 24 volt, 130 amps for the 48 volts, and that would be per per the battery. So I'm going to get back to this. If you had just a grid for power on the inverter charger, you'd want to set that to maybe 260. But if you're off grid, we're going to have to look at that a little differently, and I'll get to that in just a moment. So repeated absorption time is going to be 1 to 3 hours. Repeated absorption interval is 7 days, and absorption time is 1 to 3 hours. So this is a screenshot of my charger tab. So remember, it depends on what size generator you have. And for every one of these screens that you have to change, if you have 2 inverters, that's going to double that charge current. So if you have a multiple inverter charger set up, you'd want to figure out the max charge current of all units installed. On my generator, I like my generator to run about 50 or 60% of its rated capacity. And doing that figuring, it gave me about 50 amps DC into the batteries from the generator. So since I have 2 inverter chargers, I want 25 coming from one and 25 coming from the other. So the Victron Connect, basically the same as the VE config. And you'd also want to look at your max current per battery installed. This could come into play as well if you had multiple MPP charge controllers, like let's say you had 4 250-100s, that's going to max out and be more than the 130 or 260 in my case. So you got to kind of watch that, depending on the amount of MPPTs and the amount of capacity you have installed. So we're going to enable the charger. The battery preset is user defined. Absorption voltage 27.2, 54.8, just like before. Absorption time 1 to 3. The float is 26.8 and 54. And just like you would do on a AGM battery, you want to set the equalization to the float voltage just in case something gets clicked on. So you'll set that the same as the float voltage. You'll disable the auto equalization, disable the temp comp, and set the low temperature cutoff at 5C. Okay. Any questions so far, Nate?
I think you can probably just keep rolling on it. Got a few questions, but I think...
okay, we'll just keep rolling then. All right, so
perfect.
Once we did all that, we're going to turn the Discover battery and the Victron equipment off. Next, we're going to set up a Lynk Gateway, and that's the little magic box that is placed between the batteries and the GX device via CAN bus. There's the part number. If you're going to do a closed loop, you need this little magic box. So to connect with the communication network of the Victron inverter charger and solar controller, the Lynk Gateway is required and installed in the appropriate communications port, which is located at the bottom of the device. So here's a couple of shots. When you buy that Lynk Gateway, you also, if you're doing Victron, you'll order one of these cards. It's called a Victron Edge card for these. It has an RJ45 terminal built into it. and you want to place it into the Lynk device. Ensure it's firmly seated in the internal connecting slot. Replace the slotted cover that's provided for you after mounting the Lynk edge card. All right, and now we want to set up our comm. So this is done via Cat5 cables. With this system, you'll need a DC power converter that gives power to the communications network. And when you get a Discover battery, it's going to come with a splitter, an RJ45 splitter. So that's going to be placed in COM 2 of every one of your batteries that you have in. So you're just daisy chaining that in and out to the Lynk device, out of the Lynk device into your GX device, and then terminated. With CAN bus, you'll need a terminator on the open slot. VE bus does not require that, but VE CAN does. The DC power converter and the Lynk device is internally terminated, so you don't have to worry about that. All right, here's another shot again. You can kind of see now our comm. So you can see the Lynk device here. It's coming out of the battery into the Lynk device and up to the GX device. I have all the MPPTs connected via VE Direct. The battery side of things, this is kind of what it looks like coming out of the power converter into the first battery, out of that battery into the second, and then onto the Lynk device. Here's kind of a close-up shot of the Octo that I've got here. The one on the left, that's a VE bus, is coming into there. This is the VE CAN, our termination, our internet connection, and the two VE Direct cables are coming from our MPPT. Okay, since we've got all that hooked up, we want to turn on the Discover batteries and all the Victron equipment. So next, we're going to get into the color control, into the GX device itself, or into the GX device itself, and that could be a color control, or in my case, with the Octo, I go through the VRM remote console. So once we're into the remote console, we'll go into the device list, we'll go into settings, services, and then look at the CAN bus. So this is a shot that you'll see of the CAN bus. We get into that CAN bus, and it's going to say CAN bus 1, excuse me. And it'll, once you get into that, the CAN bus profile is going to show VE CAN and Lynx Ion. That's what is the default, and we're going to have to change that. So we get into that menu, and it'll come up with the top screenshot here, the VE CAN and Lynx Ion BMS. And we want to change that to VE CAN and CAN bus BMS at the 250 kilobyte range. So we click that. It'll take us automatically back to CAN bus 1 menu. And now it's showing up VE CAN and VE CAN bus BMS. Then we'll go back to our device list, and this Discover battery will automatically show up on the device list. So it's just that, it's that easy. Once you do that, there's another step that we need to verify. We need to get into the distributed voltage and current DVCC, and that's in the device list settings, and you'll be able to find the DVCC there. So this is a shot of a normal DVCC. If you don't have anything connected, it's just going to show up just like this. But because we changed it in these last steps, this is magic, and this is something I really like. It will automatically populate the DVCC Once you change that communication in services to that correct CAN protocol, it will automatically populate the DVCC. So it'll force the DVCC on. The limit charge current is on. This is the only setting that you really have to mess with is a maximum charge current. So getting back to the 50 amps that my generator would provide, I can provide 50 amps DC. So you set that. The shared voltage sense, or SVS, is forced on. The shared temperature sense is forced on. I couldn't get everything in one shot. So you have a shared current sense. I put it on, but on the status, it will automatically disable it. So you can have that on or off. It doesn't matter. It'll automatically disable the shared current sense, because that's the magic that's happening when the Lynk device is connected. So it'll automatically do that and do a shared current sense. Then we'll do a reboot. Make sure all the settings stuck. And go back to our device list. Now we can see our device list. We discover batteries. We can see, an impressive shot, in my opinion, of a 2,400 watt solar array, actually getting 1,400 watts of a 1,200 array. And getting into the device list, looking at that charge controller, normally you would see the status, you would see float or absorb or float. This will automatically take charge, and it will say external control. So the battery is telling everything what to do. Let's go back. Also on this, we have, if you looked in your VE Connect app, you would, under the state, instead of absorb, float, those type of things, you would see ESS, or energy storage system. So it's kind of telling everybody what to do. Sit back, I've got it. So there's other Victron compatible battery manufacturers. Not all of those are lithium. BYD, Pylon Tech, Freedom One, and Redflow. Redflow is not a lithium, but it's pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff. Guy Stewart with Victron has done a great video setting up a BYD battery with Victron energy equipment. You can see that if you search on YouTube, Victron Multiplus 2 GX and BYD installation, you should find that. Here's that. If you want to see Discover, there's Discover's website, and you can even get, we have a manual on Victron Live that covers this Victron Discover arrangement. It needs to be updated. I'm in the process, so check back in a couple weeks, and that should reflect the version 2.4 of the GX device, the revision that forced the DVCC on. Prior to that, you would have to manually put in some of the DVCC set points. Okay, so at the end of the day, after switching to closed loop, I'm noticing faster recharge times to the comparable lead acid battery set that I had installed. This results in my situation that I can do opportunity loads being implemented sooner in the day. So the opportunity loads that we use when the batteries are full, we can start turning on water heater, space heating. We can pump water from 100 meters and store it for future future use. And you can get even more clever. You can set up these opportunity loads based on a state of charge trigger. So if you like this one, I'm focusing on North American split phase and those type of things, but we have some gear here. We could go do a webinar on Victron smart lithium batteries and VE bus BMS setup. And we can also go through maybe North American dual split phase VE bus and configuration setup. Here's some contact information. If you're in North America or Canada, sales USA Canada at victronenergy.com. If you're international, ask these questions to the sales at victronenergy.com. There's my contact information at Victron, and there is my contact for Off-Grid Solutions, which is the company that I have here in Northwest Nebraska. Okay.
Awesome. Great, great presentation. I got a few questions for you whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I am.
Perfect. I think first and foremost, Colin was asking if the PowerPoint would be available. I've got a link here for the Dropbox file of that. If you're okay with me going ahead and sharing that with them, Mark.
I think I want to print that as a PDF.
Okay, perfect. So we'll
notes in it, but
we'll go ahead and go ahead and send that after this presentation is done within the next few days, and you can be looking forward to that. So questions. Colin was wondering, what is the function of the link? What is it actually doing?
Well, it's just a gateway between the Discover and the Victron gear. It changes whatever protocol they're using and changes it into VE CAN, so the GX device can understand everything that's going on. So that it's a required device. If you don't have that, then you'll be into an open loop or a no comm situation.
Awesome. Okay, next question is going to be, so is the absorption duration, is it indicated by the battery manufacturer, or is it fixed?
Well, what we put in, I can go back here. What we put in on those absorption charges, all those and float, those are just in case we lose comm. Other than that, it's the BMS is telling everybody what to do. So who knows what it is? We do see higher voltages than 54.8. You'll see voltages. If you're watching it, you'll see a max of maybe 56 something there. But these set points that we put in here are just in case situation where we want to, if we lose comm, we can still keep rolling. It's not going to be as efficient as a closed loop because it's guessing at this point for the duration, the absorbed voltages, the set time, the times, and things like that. So it's guessing at that point. So having the communications from the BMS through the GX device via the DVCC, to me, that's where the magic happens. You don't have to do anything except watch it and be amazed.
Awesome. Okay, next question is going to be, does the BYD battery set, does it also require the Lynk device?
No, that's just specific to Discover. It is a Discover Lynk Gateway. It's a device made from Discover only. Guy Stewart does a really good video on that, showing all the connections and how that is set up, but I'm not really familiar with the BYD.
And is that video by Guy, is that in Victron Professional?
It is in Victron Professional, and I think I found it on YouTube.
Okay.
But I think it's in, Guy's done a really good job of putting training in the training section of Victron Professional. And I believe that's one of the videos that are in the training portion of the Victron Professional.
Outstanding. I'll while Mark is answering more questions, I'm going to try to pull up that video on YouTube, and I'll share it in the chat. Okay. Charlie was asking if the charge terminated as a function of state of charge as determined by the BMS.
Yes.
Perfect. Easy answer, right?
Everything is done via the BMS if the comm is set up correctly.
Awesome. That is the end of the questions for now, I believe. So if you have any more questions, be sure to drop them in the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen, and we'll get to those because we have a little bit more time left. In the meantime, I'm going to share a link to a blog post that Marc just finished up writing for the Victron Energy blog. It talks a little bit about everything we're talking about here today. I think he covered pretty much everything that's in this blog post in the in this webinar, but there's probably, it's always good to hear things a few different ways, I think.
Yeah, this it's been a little shorter, but there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of good information with the steps that we went through to figure out how to do this. And again, the updated manual for the Victron Discover, it's on there now, but I will be updating that to reflect the different changes and, you know, the turn on, turn off procedures.
Perfect. Okay. Christos is asking a question. What are the actual data / signals transferred via the loop to the GX device that one can monitor for these certain batteries?
You can monitor these. You can't really get into it too much through the remote console. You can see temperature. You can see how many amps are going in. You can see state of charge and battery voltage. But Discover does have a some software that you can hook up into. Let me get a pic here. Into this USB port here. It'd be a USB to USB that you can connect from your computer right into the device, and you can really get into the guts of things, seeing specific cell voltages. So other than having to buy a USB cable, you can download the software off the Discover site and really look at more functions, more settings, not settings, but more things that are happening. Like I said, like cell voltages, cell temperatures, and things like that.
Outstanding. So I believe I just found the video for the Victron Multi Plus 2 GX and BYD installation. Does that sound like the correct video that you were referencing?
Yes. Yes.
The guy put out? Okay, cool. I'm going to share the link to that. Doesn't look like it's on the Victron YouTube channel, but it looks like it was maybe ripped from the from Victron Professional, which that's okay. Be easy to get to. Okay, cool. So I just put that in the chat box. So it's about a 26-minute long video. So check that out after the webinar. Charlie had a follow-up question asking if we had to use the Quattro LFP assistant.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Charlie was asking if we have to use the Quattro LFP assistant. I think he asked that question when you were answering the question about potentially charge determining. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So, hang on just a second. So that would be under. So the battery type, you would not use that. There would be blank. So there would be no assistance that you would have to put in there. So you leave that blank, and then that's about what it looks like. So the battery type is out. There's no assistance. You would just check the lithium batteries, and that's it. So the only tabs that you really have to get into to make this work is the general, the inverter, and the charger tabs. No virtual switches or assistance are needed.
Perfect. And it's also wondering, does Discover's BMS provide cell temperatures, cell voltage, etc., all those stats during operation? And is there any way to integrate that data with Victron GX devices?
When I get into the device list and get into the AES battery, it does not show up on mine. The only way that I can access that is through the Discover software plugged in to the Lynk Gateway. And then you'll be able to do that. But it's nothing that you'll be able to see there might be some Discover folks on that might answer that, but not at the moment through a GX device.
And if you happen to be one of those Discover guys and you have a really good answer for that, just post up in the chat, let us know. Okay, Christos was asking if both the USB and loop could work simultaneously.
Good question. Good question. I would think so. I would think so. I have not tried that, but I would think so. You can probably look through the VRM, through the remote console, and through the Discover software at the same time.
Outstanding. Okay, perfect. Colin was he'd made a comment saying asking to show the YouTube references. So just in case you didn't see that in the chat box, I put that up there. That's the second YouTube link that I just put up there. So that is there. Charlie said, "Great presentation. Thanks."
Right on. Thanks, Charlie. So these Discover batteries are offered worldwide. So there's, from what I know, there's plenty of stock for the Discover batteries in 824 and 48 volt configurations. And I just can't say enough good things from an installer's point of view. This really works nice. It really helps out with the install. It's something you can monitor remotely. So just all the good Victron gear. To me, this is a really good coupling.
Awesome. Doesn't look like we have any more questions related to Discover closed loop. If I happen to miss one of the questions, you haven't got your question answered yet, just put it in the Q&A section or in the chat box. I'm kind of monitoring both of them, and then we'll get to it. Otherwise, we're rolling up on about 45 minutes, and we'll answer any questions that you've got going on. Lee was saying he just caught the end that there was a question for Discover. Yeah, Lee, are you from Discover? What was that question that we had about? Mark, do you remember what you were wanting to know from Discover?
Looking inside of the battery via, or you can do it simultaneously through the Discover software and the remote console.
Perfect. Mark, would you like to pull Lee up and see if he can answer that question a little more directly?
What's that?
Lee Adams is from Discover. He's in the chat.
Okay.
Would you like him to be pulled up as a panelist?
Sure.
Perfect. Lee, are you in a spot where you can be pulled up as a panelist?
I'm not sure I can. I'm not sure how to do that.
I can take care of that on my end.
Okay.
All right. so Lee, we're going to promote you to panelist. It's going to kick him out and then bring him back in.
Can you hear me?
Okay, Lee, yep, we can hear you.
Hey, sorry, I missed that. I'm in between a couple of things. So ask the question again. It was referencing the links? Link?
Yes. Yes. That could you monitor both at the same time via the remote console through the GX and the software that you guys have that you can hook into the Lynk Gateway into your computer via the USB? Can you monitor things simultaneously?
Yeah, I have to be quite honest with you and say I'm not sure. I would need to confer with the engineers. I know when you're connected to the link, you would have the AES dashboard that you referred to earlier in the call. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it would disable the communication to the GX, but I can definitely find out for everyone.
Perfect. And then if you're still hanging out, we can send that information over. Maybe Marc can.
Yep, sure.
Can to include that information whenever he sends up the follow-up information. Perfect. Thanks, Lee.
Sure.
Hey, no problem. Sorry, guys.
Thanks, Lee. And if anyone would be interested in any one of these two future webinars, let us know in the chat. We can accommodate.
Yeah, these webinars are probably going to be a thing going forward. And so if anybody has any questions about this that really need to be expanded on, deep dives, anything like that, like feel free to either put it here in the chat box or you can request webinars in the Victron community. That's also a thing. We're all in there pretty often, and we get to see those. And we've got several distributors and sales guys and ambassadors who specialize in different areas, and those webinars can be kind of divvied up to whoever's specialty it is. So feel free to request that stuff. We're all about education. Okay.
Well,
I'm not seeing any questions. Everything's kind of tapered off a little bit.
Okay. Well, he's still on. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and we will follow up with the slide deck and the other information, and we will see you on another webinar. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in.